What's that? John? How about the lisinopril? I'm going to turn this on a second.
Hello, I'd like to take this time, this is Mayor Jay Wagner, Mayor of High Point. I'd like to take this time to welcome everyone who is listening to the August 3rd regular meeting of High Point City Council. Before we begin, I would like to first call the roll so that you know everyone is here. Present in the room, we have Councilman Tyrone Johnson, Councilwoman Monica Peters, Councilman Britt Moore. I'm present. The Mayor Pro Tem Chris Williams is here. Councilman Wesley Hudson is here. Councilman Cyril Jefferson is here. Councilman Holmes, are you with us remotely?
I am.
And Councilman Jones, are you with us remotely?
I am.
Okay, so all members are present at the meeting. Councilman Holmes and Jones are attending remotely. The roll's been called. I'd like for those present in the room to rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is that the interim police chief I see in the back behind that mask? All right, I'd like to take this time to recognize our new interim police chief, Travis Stroud. Thank you for being with us tonight. First on the agenda is the public comment period. Last I heard from our clerk, we had not received any public comments electronically. Is that still true? Okay, that is still true. So we will move on. Obviously, if you're out there, and you can always reach both me and any other councilman here via our internet email address or through a phone call. So, every day is a public comment period. You can always reach us. First thing on the agenda, I would like to recognize the Finance Committee Chairman, Britt Moore, for his portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. We did meet the Finance Committee. Everyone was in attendance at our regular time. We have for you tonight a consent agenda, which is consecutively numbered from 2020-275 through 2020-280. I am presenting this with a favorable motion for approval.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Is there a second? Motion was seconded by Councilman Wesley Hudson. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda items?
Only the item with the bookmobile donation to Growing High Point. It's a good partnership. That'll turn into a mobile grocery store that's going to be of service to our people in the community. I think that maybe some of this might have been possible with some CDBG funds. So I do want to kind of give kudos to the city and the staff for playing this part in that.
Yeah, I concur.
Yes.
That's going to be a good thing. Good thing. Anyone else like to speak on the consent agenda items? Okay. Hearing no comment, I will call the roll then for approval of the consent agenda items. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson. Aye. Councilwoman Peters.
Aye.
Councilman Moore.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams.
Aye.
Councilman Hudson. Aye. Councilman Jones.
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson. Aye. The mayor votes aye, so the consent agenda is approved by a vote of 9-0.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Next on the agenda are the planning and development items. I'll be handling that portion of the agenda. And the first item is a resolution of intent to establish a public hearing date of August 17th to consider a voluntary non-contiguous annexation of 15.5 acres on National Service Road. And I move for approval of that item.
Second.
The Councilman Moore has seconded that motion. Is there any discussion on calendaring the annexation hearing? Hearing none. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson? Aye. Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
And Mayor votes aye, so that public hearing is scheduled by a vote of 9-0. Motion is approved. We have several items on for public hearing. First one is annexation and zoning map, accompanying zoning map case for, I guess it's Mirage Properties. And before we get that presentation going, any items that are on for public hearing tonight, based on the law for remote meetings, we are not allowed to vote on those for a period of 24 hours after the public hearing. So after the hearing tonight, if you have if anyone out there has any comments on any of the public hearing items, you'll have 24 hours from today to submit those comments. Council will be reconvening on Wednesday to take action on the public hearing items. Okay, with that, I'll turn the meeting over to our staff member.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the City of High Point Planning and Development Department. And the next two agenda items, Annexation Case 2001 and Zoning Map Amendment 2006 are related. Staff will provide a combined presentation. However, council must vote on these items separately. These cases pertain to a 4.9 acre parcel located along the south side of Boulder Road, approximately 430 feet east of Tarrant Road. The area that is highlighted right there, that is the site in question for annexation and zoning. The applicant is requesting annexation and the establishment of City High Point zoning in order to have access to city utilities. There is an existing building contractor with an outdoor storage yard that's located on the site, and no change of use is proposed and no new development is proposed. As for the annexation, the applicant is requesting annexation of access to city utilities. This is in the northeastern portion of the city's planning area, and there have been a number of annexation in this portion of the city. As you take a look at the map, those areas highlighted in white are lands that have already been annexed to the City of High Point. The areas in gray are still within unincorporated Guilford County. Adjacent lands to the west along Tarrant Road were annexed in 1988. Lands to the north were annexed in 2002, and lands to the south were annexed in 1999. So the city boundary has been firmly established in this area. This request represents a logical progression of the city's annexation policy in this area, as this site is generally surrounded by city limits, and city service vehicles are already active in this area. As far as the zoning portion of this request, this is just a blow up of that same map. This property is designated under the adopted land use plan for restricted industrial use. The site currently has a light industrial zoning under Guilford County's jurisdiction. The applicant is requesting light industrial zoning within the City of High Point. That LI district will allow that current use that's on the property, and it will allow uses that are consistent with the surrounding development in the area. The request for LI district zoning is consistent with city's adopted policy guidance because the site is designated restricted industrial by the land use plan, and the LI district does not conflict with any adopted policy guidance for this area. Furthermore, the request is reasonable and in the public interest because the LI district will permit the current industrial use on the property and is compatible with previous zoning approvals granted in this area. Thus, staff is recommending approval of the request to rezone this site to the light industrial district. This application was reviewed, the zoning map amendment was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their June public hearing, and the commission recommended approval by a vote of 7-0. And with any zoning request, the council must include in their final recommendation an official statement of consistency and why the request is considered reasonable in the public interest. And we do offer that language in the staff report for your consideration. That's a brief summary of both the annexation and the zoning request for Mirage Properties. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Anyone have any questions?
Herb, what's currently on the property? You said the current use?
There's a building contractor use on the property. I believe this is the aerial. So they have a office building and a contractor storage area in the rear of the site.
Okay, I didn't see that aerial on mine. Maybe in the second shot. Okay.
And the applicant has noted, even though they have almost 5 acres, there's a stream and steep topography in the rear.
Right.
So there's not a lot of land for any future expansion.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions? Is there anyone from the applicant who is connected, who would like to speak? All right, I hear there's Brian Perrell raised his hand. There's some way, Brian, some way to connect him in? We're working on it, Brian.
There you go.
Hey, Brian, I think you're connected now.
Yes,
All right, Brian. If you
I'm here.
if you start out by giving us your name and your address, just for our record.
Okay, Brian Perrell. I'm the owner of Mirage Properties at 1091 Boulder Road, Greensboro 27409.
Okay. You're recognized for whatever you want to say.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just what's been said is true. We've been in the building, renting it for 5.5 years. We purchased it from Mr. Seeger, who's been there since it was built. And we have a similar type of business. And our main interest is tying on to city utilities.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much, Brian. We're gonna.
Thank you.
I think we're gonna mute you back again. Okay. All right. We can't take action on the item tonight, so we'll move on to the next item. And that would be the item annexation of annexation case for Wilford Yarns and Mary Puckett, which is annexation case 20-02.
Yes, Herb Shannon, City of High Point Planning Department. Annexation case 2002 is a request for annexation to have access to city utilities to support a small single-family subdivision. This is a 2.5 acre tract of land, and the applicant is proposing to develop 4, possibly up to 5 single-family homes on this site. This site is located along the east side of Hickswood Road, approximately 210 feet north of Willard Road. This is within an unincorporated enclave of the city, an unincorporated enclave, but as you can see, this area is generally surrounded by the city limits. The site is within the city's ETJ area, so we do have zoning control over this area. No changes are proposed for the zoning of the site. City services are already present in this area. As you can see, there are residential subdivisions to the north, east, and west. And this request does represent a logical progression of the city's annexation policies for this area. And the annexation of this site would not negatively impact the city's ability to provide services. Are there any questions of staff regarding annexation case 2002?
Thank you, Ms. Shannon. Is there anyone from the applicant who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, can you hear me? This is Wilford Yearns.
Yes, we can hear you. You're
Great. My name's Wilford Yearns, 532 Hillwood Court, Greensboro 27410. Like Mr. Shannon said, the intention is really just to be able to tie on to water and sewer with the city of High Point. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Not hearing any. Thank you, Mr. Yearns.
Thank you.
Okay, this item will be out for public comment for 24 hours. Council will take final action at its meeting on Wednesday. All right, next item is annexation case of Dennis Andrew Turner.
Yes, Herb Shannon. This next item, annexation case 2004, is for a 0.3 acre parcel located in the southern portion of the city's planning area. The site's lying along the east side of Giles Street, approximately 270 feet south of East Fairfield Road. There's an existing single-family home that's on this property. The applicant's requesting annexation to have access to city utilities. This site is within the city's ETJ area where the city has zoning control. Currently, the property has a zoning of transitional office. No change in zoning is proposed. Abutting lands are, as you can see, the site are within the city of High Point limits. It butts the limits to the north and west, and there are lands to the south that are also within the city of High Point. City service vehicles are already travel these abutting roads, and this represents a logical progression of the city's annexation policy for this area and will not negatively impact the city's ability to provide services. Are there any questions of staff?
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Is there anyone from the applicant or representing the applicant who would like to speak on this matter?
Yes, sir. This is Dennis Turner, the owner of 105 Giles Street in High Point. Just here to represent myself. I'm available for any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Turner? Okay. Hearing none, then council will take final action on this item on Wednesday. Comment for a period of 24 hours. All right. Next case is the Keystone Group zoning map amendment 20-07.
Yes, once again, Herb Shannon. Our next application is zoning map amendment 20-07. This application proposes to amend conditions of a previously approved planned development, the Northborough Subdivision. This development was granted a planned development residential or PDR zoning district approval in 2016. That was prior to the adoption of the current development ordinance. This is an approximately 114 acre site within the northwestern portion of the city's planning area. The site is located along the south side of Boylston Road, approximately 1,300 feet west of Atkins Road. And just so everyone's on the same page. Oops, let me go back. This is Boylston Road. This is Atkins Road. Further to the east, you have Sandy Ridge Road. This, as I noted previously, the northwestern portion of the city's planning area. The previously adopted PDR district included a master plan and zoning conditions allowing up to 300 dwelling units that will consist of a mixture of single family, twin homes, and townhomes. The applicant has requested to amend the previous approval to increase the development from 300 units to 402 units. Also, the terminology and references are being updated within the updated conditional zoning ordinance to match the language of the newly adopted development ordinance. The adopted land use map classifies this area as low density residential. The slide you see before you is a copy of the land use map for that area of the city. Those lands that are outlined in that yellow designation are designated as low density residential, and that permits residential development at a density up to 5 dwelling units per acre. The requested amendment to go from 300 to 402 units would increase the density from its current 2.6 units per acre to 3.5 units per acre. All conditions from the previous zoning approval are being transferred over into this updated amendment. The only change is instead of the maximum being 300, it'd be 402 units. This was the master plan that was submitted. The property obtained its initial plan development approval. The layout is still the same. You have primary entrance. Oops, excuse me. Primary entrance, Boylston Road's entrance is from the north, and you have various tracks labeled A through E. The Boylston Road will be the primary access point to the site. There is a connection to the east to this public street here and to this public street here, and those have been developed and connected. Tracks F, which is up at the entrance to the development, and track B are currently under development and almost complete, and grading has commenced for track A. To help you and understand the changes that the applicant's proposed, we have a table that we put together that shows you kind of changes. Track A, no changes. Track B, no changes as to maximum units. In fact, they've offered to reduce the number of units because as they platted that out, they didn't reach that limit. Track C, D, E1, and E2, no changes. And in track F, they're also reducing the number of units there.
Can you read what you just read while we look at this particular map?
Okay. Track A is about 12 acres located in the middle of the development. That's proposed for single-family dwellings, and they will also have their clubhouse there, up to 40 units, no changes. Track B is approximately 24 acres. That's right here. Their current, that section of the development is almost complete and that's being developed with single-family homes. It was initially approved for 120 homes. They reduced that to 96 because when they laid out their plat and recorded their plat, that was a maximum they could get there. Track C, right there, be for either single-family homes or townhomes. It's about 11.9 acres, up to 80 units, no change from the previous approval. Track D, for single-family homes or townhomes, up to 110 units, no change from the previous approval. Track E1 and E2 along the western boundary of the site. For single-family or townhomes, no changes, up to 160 in both those units in both those tracks. And track F, which is up at the entrance of the development, that has been fully built out with townhomes. They initially were proposing 30 units there. They were only able to get in 28 units. Now, when you look at the entire site, about 90 acres are within individual tracks. There are another 24 that consist of the road right-of-way and common areas associated with the floodplain. There is a perennial streams that runs from a north to south direction through the middle of the site. In the gray area, the flood zones associated with that, those areas will remain undeveloped and be part of the common area of the development. One thing I would note, when you add up all of the units for the individual tracks, it's about 540 units. But that's the developer had proposed that to give them flexibility because the site does have some topography challenges. They wanted to have some flexibility where they get more in one track, maybe less in another track. But regardless of how all those numbers add up, the condition that they have offered is not to exceed 402 units. I would note for the public, for informational purposes, we did include in the staff report transportation impact and school impact information from the county. In 2016, when the site initially obtained zoning approval, there was a traffic impact analysis. That analysis was based upon 450 units being developed in the site. The previous year in 2015, the applicant has submitted for annexation rezoning. They initially proposed 450 units. That initial proposal was not approved. They withdrew that application. They took into consideration concerns from the neighbors and from the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, resubmitted with a lower number. Their proposal for 300 units does not change any of the previously adopted transportation improvements, and those were that there be a turn lane installed at the entrance from Bolson Road. That's been installed. That there would be connections to Sweet Meadow Road to the east, and for Quail Meadow also to the east. Those connections have been installed. And there also was a condition that no construction traffic will be through Sweet Meadow Road or Quail Meadow. And then when I went out to post the site, they have specifically signs out on those roads saying no construction entrance. Key items to note from the staff analysis, as far as compatibility with the surrounding area, the requested amendment does not change any of the previous compatibility findings. There's no change in the type of uses. There's no changes in the development standards for the various tracks. The only change would be the increase from 300 to 402 uses. The track configuration that you previously saw, no change, that it stays exactly the same. As far as the environmental impacts, no change in that floodplain area being preserved for common area. As for the improvements, as I previously noted, those connections to those abutting streets have been noted. So there are 3 access points into the site, and the turn lane on Bolson Road has been installed. Thus, staff is recommending approval of this request to amend the rezoning to add the condition for additional dwelling units. The request is consistent with adopted policy guidance because both the adopted land use plan and the Northwest Area Plan designate this area as low density residential, which is a land use classification that supports densities up to 5 units per acre. And the request is reasonable and in the public interest because the impacts are mitigated from the requested increase in dwelling units, which would be a maximum of 102 additional dwelling units, increasing the planned development to a maximum of 3.5 units per acre. Now, this item was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their June public hearing. The commission recommended approval by a vote of 6-1. That one vote in opposition was from Member Stone. She noted that she was uncomfortable with the requested 25% increase in density. I would also note that at the Planning and Zoning Commission, there were 4 comments from members of the public. Those comments were a request to postpone the hearing until it can be held in person, concerns with increase in traffic, recommend the developer reduce the number of homes and add more common area to help with stormwater drainage. There were also some stormwater runoff concerns and also concerns that the request is inconsistent with the character of surrounding property owners. Those are comments that the public submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That is a quick summary of this application. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Mr. Shannon, you mentioned that the last traffic study was done in 2016, and I know you said that they're still going to keep whatever accommodations that they plan to do since then. I'm guessing that whatever's happened in this area over the past 4 years hasn't changed so much that that traffic study has become irrelevant. It's still a pretty valid traffic study for what they're looking to do.
Yes, and I don't know if Mr. McDonald is here. He can get into the specifics of the traffic impact analysis. I believe the key thing to note is that it was based upon 450 units. So they have not reached, even under this new request, they have not reached the limits in which that traffic impact analysis was based upon.
And the only entrance and exit is off of Bolston Road?
Yes, this is an aerial of the area prior to development. Their primary entrance will be from Bolston Road, from that Northborough Road, which goes to the middle of the site. And there is a public street connection to the east, which heads back to Bolston Road. I think you may be able to see that better on this projection. So that's your primary entrance where they have the turn lanes. And there was an existing rural subdivision to the east, where a public street stopped right here, and a public street stopped there, and they've made those 2 connections. They're in place now.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Shannon? Thank you, Ms. Shannon. All right, is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the developer?
My name is Judy Stalder, 3735 Admiral Drive. And also on the line to answer questions is Scott Wallace from Keystone.
Thank you, Ms. Stalder, go ahead.
The Northborough Subdivision is already under construction, and it's amazing what you discover once you start a project. But mainly what we discovered was that this property can support a little more density and still retain the massive amounts of open space to protect the creeks and meet the market demand for a balance of housing, personal outdoor space, and common area. Also, as we move forward, the number of homes being built is tied to market demand as well as hidden obstacles we find in the field. So this request to increase the overall density of the property by a little less than 1 unit an acre is to allow some flexibility. The density will be adjusted by tract. The original zoning designated a maximum number of homes for each tract, and that maximum number will not increase on any tract. The change is in the overall numbers of the homes that can be built. So the number of homes permitted on all tracts adds up to about 516, and we're currently able to choose 300 of those to build. But we're now proposing the possibility of, and I say possibility, of a maximum of 402 homes. This is a large development, and the overall increase in density is less than 1 unit per acre. But the density will stay within the 3 to 5 units per acre recommended by the land use plan, and the actual density will be about 3.5 homes per acre. But here's an example of how the flexibility is used. Because tracts B and F are already under development, that density will not be increased, but actually decreased. Property owners that have already purchased in our development will not experience any increased density in their immediate neighborhood as a result of this request. The transportation impact analysis was based on the possibility of 450 units, and the recommended improvements for those 450 units are already in place. We sent out information to the neighbors we were unable to meet personally, But the neighbors that contacted us were the owners of large tracts adjacent to the property, presumably in the interest of future development, which will include future access points to the property. In conclusion, the density will remain within the range indicated on the land use plan, and that's a maximum of 3.5 homes per acre. The number of homes on each tract will not increase. The transportation infrastructure to safely manage traffic for more homes than will actually be built is already in place. So we ask for your vote of approval for this request to allow some flexibility as Keystone completes this community in High Point. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Judy, this is Britt Moore, Councilman Moore. Tracks E1 and E2, is there currently a bridge over the stream?
Not yet.
Anyone else with any questions? Okay. So council, this again is open for comment for a period of 24 hours. And council will take final action on its meeting on Wednesday. Next is a text amendment, case 20-02.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Andrews with the Planning and Development Department. This item, as you said, is a text amendment to the city's development ordinance. This text amendment includes a variety of changes that were both identified by staff and those necessitated by recent changes in state legislation. As with previous general amendments to the development ordinance, most of these changes were identified by staff and can be described or categorized as either corrections to errors or omissions. They might be clarifications of existing terms or provisions, mostly wording changes. You might have some minor substantive changes, and then there might be the addition or modification of graphics that help explain the ordinance. But however, this item before you today mainly consists of changes that are required due to adopted state legislation. Within your report are details of the proposed amendment section by section, and they're grouped by topic. And it states the reason for each of those changes. And those which are necessitated by state legislation include the appropriate session law numbers. In all, the proposed amendments continue our staff's efforts to make the development ordinance more friendly or more user-friendly, more consistent in its formatting, language and terminology, and more error-free. Staff recommends approval of the item. At the June 25th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the Commission recommended approval of the amendment by a vote of 7-0, while adopting a consistency statement that these general amendments make the ordinance more user-friendly and flexible and support the city's adopted policy guidance. You also adopted a reasonableness statement that the proposed amendments to the development ordinance address necessary changes as a result of state legislation and continue to pursue making the ordinance error-free, easier to read and understand, and more consistent in its use of language and formatting. But again, staff recommends approval of this request, and I would be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Anyone with any questions from staff?
Yeah, Mr. Andrews, what is the, I don't know, what do you all use to measure what makes things more user-friendly, I guess, as far as text? Are you guys using some sort of metric or standard or something that measures?
There's not necessarily a metric, but we do meet as staff every couple of weeks to just discuss issues that come up, either citizens that might have questions about the development ordinance, or even as our staff reviews plans, site plans, subdivisions, that sort of thing. We will take note and figure out how can we kind of answer questions before they come up. So people aren't, there's no confusion in our ordinance. We want to make it as readable and easy to understand for the development community and our citizens.
Do any non-planning and development eyes get put on this?
Certainly. So this would have been viewed outside our department. It was viewed by
The commission, I know.
the planning commission. So it's been sent out for public review as well.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And as with the other public hearing items, this item will be held over for public comment for 24 hours. Council will be taking final action on it, hopefully on Wednesday. Next, we don't have any community development items or P&L items. So we'll go straight to our general business agenda. And the first item on the general business agenda is regarding A+ yellow taxi. And just to clarify, this is a hearing, so we also cannot take action on this tonight as well. It's not a public hearing. Okay, I got you. Okay, good. Okay, all right.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, as I've relayed to you in my email last week, the city and state law authorizes the city to, or the city ordinance and the state law outlines a franchise, that the city is authorized to issue a franchise for cab companies. Outlined in that ordinance and in state law, there are certain requirements that you have to make to continue your franchise. One of those is to submit to inspections with our police department. We have with us tonight Officer Tad Cramp and also our chief, and I assume that Tad's going to take care of the information, but he will present. This is the first time we've had a hearing like this in my time, I think, with the city. Tad will present his information that has come from his investigation. You also have the owners, Mr. Ali of the A+ Cab, that's here to present their information. And then it'll be up to the council to make a determination whether or not you suspend their ability to operate or allow them to continue to operate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening. I'm Officer Tad Cramp. I'm with the police department. I've been with the police department for over 22 years. I've been acting, I was appointed by Chief of Police as the taxi inspector, as the city ordinance requires, for almost 7 years now, which actually reminds me that I'm going to need our new chief to appoint me as well. We'll handle that. During the course of my 7 years or so as being taxi inspector, there's quite a bit of history, and I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I believe it was in 2013 or 2014, we came before City Council. The state law allowed for taxi companies to lower the liability insurance limits that they were required to carry. The city ordinance was still well above what the new state law allowed them to carry. And during that time, the council voted to reduce the liability limits down to 50,000, 100,000, 50,000, as opposed to what the state required at the time, which was 30,000, 60,000, 25,000. So it was still above the minimum that the state required, but it was a significant reduction from what had previously been required. And this was done in an effort to assist the taxi companies, to save them a little bit of money, to help them operate a little bit more easily. And I did vote in favor or recommend in favor of that recommendation then. To bring you up to speed to where we are today, in March, I received some information that A+ Taxi had a vehicle that was no longer operable, but their tag was good. And they had a vehicle that was operable, but had not been through any city inspections for quite some time because they couldn't get it to pass inspections. So the company elected to take the good tag off of the wrecked taxi, put it on the cab that couldn't pass inspection, and put it out there to operate. I had occasion to stop the vehicle. I confirmed that the tag that was on the vehicle did not match the vehicle in question or the taxi in question. That taxi cab was towed, and I seized the tag that didn't belong on that vehicle. After that, I explained to the company that they were going to have to produce their paperwork and that I was going to be watching them much more closely with their paperwork to make sure that none of these errors were being overlooked. And I say error, giving them slight benefit of the doubt, but in this case, it was pretty obvious that they took the tag off of one vehicle and placed it on the other intentionally. The very next time that that company had to renew their taxi or their license plates, I required them to produce for me the insurance paperwork to prove that they had all of the limits. And they did produce paperwork to show that the taxis that they wanted renewed met the city ordinance standard of 50,000, 100,000, 50,000 limits. And that was in mid-March. Shortly thereafter, I heard, but was unable to confirm, that there was some other swapping around of things. Things weren't, they were dropping one of the vehicles that they had just gotten the paperwork. They were intending to use the paperwork to get a tag that they could put on a different vehicle, because the vehicle that they were trying to put it on ended up breaking down. I was not able to confirm that any of that information was true or that any of that stuff took place. Moving forward into June, on June 26th, I was informed by a patrol officer that one of the taxis had crashed into a parked vehicle at 5 o'clock in the morning, and that taxi cab driver was found to be impaired. He was arrested for DWI, and he was found to have a blood alcohol concentration of almost double the legal limit, and he was operating a taxi for the taxi company. In looking at that particular driver, I also discovered that not only had he been impaired that night, but his permit to operate a taxi had been expired for over 2 years, and the company had been allowing him to work for them with a taxi permit that was expired for over 2 years. That in itself is in violation of the ordinance, because the city ordinance requires that the taxi company be responsible for all of their employees. Shortly thereafter, there were a couple more taxis that they were wanting to put on the road, and they requested their paperwork to get the tag, which is something that I have to sign off on for every tag that they get renewed. And when they produced the insurance paperwork, I noticed that the insurance paperwork showed that their limits were now 30,000, 60,000, and 25,000, which at the time was what I believed to be the minimum standard for the state. And in doing some research, I discovered that those limits had actually been changed in 2018. I wasn't even aware of it. So the new state limit is actually 100,000, 300,000, 50,000, and our city ordinance is well below what the state minimum is. I did a little research. I contacted the insurance company, and I found that on April the 8th, one of the owners from the company contacted the insurance company and requested that they change all of the limits down to the minimum 30,000, 60,000, 25,000, which is the minimum for any passenger vehicle, non-taxi cab, any passenger vehicle in the state. And that it was their request to have those limits changed. And looking at the August 8th date when that change was made, it was in very close proximity to me notifying both taxi companies that due to COVID, I would not be conducting taxi inspections, that Furniture Market had been canceled, and the taxi inspections that typically go along with Furniture Market were going to be postponed indefinitely until we knew where things were going to be with COVID. So I found it extremely curious that right around the same time that I notified them they weren't going to be inspected, they changed their limits to well below what the city ordinance requires. When that particular cab was presented to me, I explained to them that their limits are well below the city ordinance and below state law, and that they were going to have to up their limits prior to getting the tag paperwork. And I denied their request to get the tag paperwork for that particular vehicle based on the fact that it did not have enough insurance. And I explained to them this. And that was on Friday, July the 3rd, right before 4th of July weekend. And I had a feeling that that particular taxi was going to be used over the weekend. So I sent out an email department-wide to the police department saying, if you happen to see taxi number so-and-so out and about, it does not have valid registration on it and it should not be operating as a taxi. And it was on 4th of July, I believe it was around noon on Main Street. One of the officers who was working found that taxi cab. Happens to be a Mercury Grand Marquis with a license plate from a different taxi cab, which is a Ford Crown Victoria operating on Main Street as a taxi cab. At that point, he notified me. I came in on the following Monday, completed the initial report, contacted the interim city manager, explaining to him the contents of the investigation and where things were. And I requested exploring a suspension and then, of course, bringing the company before council for your consideration for revocation.
Any questions for the officer?
At noon on Main Street, was that vehicle taken out of service at that point?
It was towed at that point, and the license plate was taken off of it at that point.
That vehicle was not registered as a taxi at all?
That vehicle had not been added to the company. It had been marked up, but it had not been added to their fleet. They had been requesting the paperwork to add it to their fleet, but they stuck the tag from one of their vehicles, inoperable vehicles that is in their fleet.
You mentioned their responses to a number of the other items. Did they respond at all to this most recent one?
When I went to the company to inform them of the collection of violations, their initial response in regards to the DWI and the driver was, that's on them. I tell them they're supposed to follow the law. I tell them they're supposed to keep up with their permits, but it's up to them to actually keep up with their own permits. I explained to the company, that's not how this works. You're the owner of the company. They work for you. It is your responsibility. You're responsible for their actions. You're responsible for whether they're permitted or not. And as far as the registration issues, they tried to explain to me that the insurance hiccup was an error on the part of the insurance company, which I had already confirmed through the insurance company that it was, they contacted them and requested the change in limits I have been told, and I believe Emmett will probably speak to that Emmett was out of the country at the time. There's 3 owners. Zubair Ali is one of the owners. He's not present tonight. And then Khurshid and Emmett was out of the country, and Zubair made the changes while Emmett was out of the country. I have found through my dealings with the company that most of the issues I have with the company tend to revolve around Zubair and Zubair's inattention to the things that he's supposed to be paying attention to, and a very hands-off approach, although he does seem to be the one who is most in charge of the company and the one I deal with the most. But he tends to take that's on the driver, it's just my name on the cab attitude.
Was there a response to the 4th of July incident?
The situation, or it turned into Zubair attempting to argue with me, and I explained to him that this was a matter to go before City Council. There was no direct addressing of the 4th of July incident. It went very quickly to he was the victim of several hit and runs that the police department has refused to investigate on his property, and that the other companies do bad things too, and everything but taking any type of responsibility for, we tried to get through the weekend and we shouldn't have. That never happened.
This is Councilman Holmes. Was the assertion by Mr. Zubair that the drivers are independent contractors and he acts as a broker? Is that his assertion of the company structure?
No, his statement was that he instructs the drivers that they're supposed to follow the laws, and it's not his responsibility if they choose not to. It was never a statement of he was an independent contractor. He was operating a
all in price
cab.
for a Charlotte trip and a Continental for you guys is $240.
That was Councilman Jones talking to someone.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It was an A+ yellow cab. There are some independent owner operators that do own their own taxi and operate under the name of other companies. But in this case, this is an A+ yellow cab owned taxi cab, and it was an employee of the company who was operating that cab and was impaired and crashed on duty.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on council have any questions?
You mentioned that he or she, that the driver was impaired. I would say that once, and I'm not saying this does not get them from being responsible or not being responsible, but once the driver leaves the station, okay, they can stop somewhere and, unfortunately get a drink or whatever. Okay, they should not do that.
Right.
But there will be there's no way for them to know that unless an accident or they're stopped.
Right. I can't speak for exactly how the company operates, whether the driver goes in and out of the office throughout the night. I can speak for he was not permitted to be a taxi driver for more than 2 years and still allowed to work for the company. And my overall dealings with the company has always been, well, what the driver does when they leave here is not my problem. And the ordinance makes it pretty clear that they're operating a company and every driver is their problem, and they are in fact responsible for whatever their driver's activities are. And he's clearly taking a hands-off. it's not my problem attitude. And is it possible that he left that night and went and got drunk and the company could have never known that? It's possible. It's not exactly consistent with my dealings with the company as far as, yeah, we know our guys don't really do what they're supposed to do, but that's not our problem.
So you mentioned earlier that one of the partners was here to speak. Is that correct?
There are two of the owners here.
Okay.
They'll be given up.
Okay.
That one car that had the DUI incident, was it also under a wrong tag?
Actually, that one, the officers checked the tag specifically against the VIN number, and that one was correct. It was properly registered. At the time of the crash, it was underinsured, but it was properly registered.
And they would have known what the limits were.
They brought me paperwork in April or in March that had the proper limits. And there was absolutely nothing between March and April when they reduced the limits that had changed to allow them to believe that there was a reason that they were allowed to change. My feeling is that they knew that there wasn't going to be inspections because of COVID, and they decided at least for that period of time, they were going to operate with minimum insurance and try to save some money, at least for that period of time. And their intention may have been to bump the coverage back up before the next round of inspections, but they got caught beforehand. But I double checked all of the paperwork in March, and it matched our city ordinance, which is actually below what it should be. But they did know what it was supposed to be. And they've been operating at that level for a number of years. And they knew that it took an act of council to change it the first time. So there was no act of council that would have given them the right to change it after that.
Anyone else with a question?
If we are to revoke this, what's the process for them to ever cure and possibly get back in business?
At this point, they have brought everything up to compliance. Their insurance is not only compliant with the city, it's actually exceeding our current city ordinance and is in compliance with the state law. And to the best of my knowledge, all of their vehicles that they are operating under the proper tags. So they have brought everything into compliance. As far as you know, it's up to council to decide whether or not they're allowed to continue to operate, if they're going to have some period of probation. This is not something that we've dealt with in my tenure or 7 years, as the taxi inspector. So I'm in uncharted waters at this point. I do know that there was direct and intentional violations of the ordinance, and I felt that it was important enough that it needed to come before council. Where it goes from here, I don't know.
So you're saying at this point that they have cleared everything up?
They have gotten their insurance back to what it's supposed to be. They meet the state requirements now, which I believe we're going to try to amend the ordinance to bring that up to compliance with the state minimums. So they have brought theirs up to compliance, and to the best of my knowledge, they are fully in compliance.
What about the guy that got arrested for the DWI?
It's still pending.
Okay, but is he still an employee?
That's up to them to answer.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
If I could comment to that, because I've spoken with the owners. That person, and I know you guys will probably elaborate a little bit. This is Councilman Johnson. He is no longer with the company, working as an employee or independent. So he's no longer with the company. So that was one of my first questions. I wanted to know if the person was still working for the company.
Mr. Mayor, I have another question, but not for Officer Cramp, which we appreciate you being here. Madam Attorney, as far as like the city goes and liability, if any, that's ever incurred, we have a responsibility to authorize and approve these kind of things and then to do the opposite. But we can get into some, I imagine, some hot water. I mean, is that potential there whenever, because it's not a city entity, but if it's a city approved entity that ends up not doing what it needs to do, gets in some trouble, gets into some litigation, I mean, I'm wondering where does that put us ever?
That's the decision that you have to make, whether or not you feel comfortable enough with the correction that they've done.
I guess my question is, let's say we move forward and just hypothesizing and we approved, and knowing the history of what's happened, go out next week and something really bad happens that could lead to litigation. How much of that could fall back on us and making the decision that approved it?
A clear answer to that.
Yeah.
I really don't. Again, I think you have to take into account the facts, especially as they are proposed by the Officer Cramp and by the company. You've already heard testimony from Officer Cramp that it seems that they were already aware of what the requirements were, and they had taken some actions that were in opposition to that. They had a driver that perhaps was irresponsible, whether they knew about it or not. They still have responsibility for that because he is employed or an independent contractor of that company. So there's some buffer there, but again, you just have to take all the facts and evidence into account and decide whether you want to allow them to continue, suspend, or terminate.
Officer, did you say, did I hear you say that the multiple direct and intentional violations around, this has apparently been a pattern. About when did this start? I made some notes, but there's been a lot to take notes on. 2013, 2014?
2013 and 14 is when we came before council and got the limits lowered. That was just giving you some background and some history. The entire time that I have worked as the taxi inspector, I encounter former employees, I get tips, I get, this is going on and that's going on, most of which I'm not able to substantiate, whether it's going on at night and I just don't work at night. The vast majority of the police department does not get into taxi monitoring. So they pull over a taxi cab, a Crown Vic looks like a Crown Vic. It may be a 2007 Crown Vic tag on a 2006 Crown Vic, and the officer may not catch it in the process of issuing a ticket, and they may fix it before inspections roll around, and I may never substantiate that. So in my 7 years, I have received a lot of information that I have not been able to substantiate. Starting this past March, I saw it on the road after receiving some information that that particular cab had the wrong tag on it. I was able to pull it over and I was able to substantiate that one. From that point forward, I started watching their paperwork a lot more closely, which is what brought the insurance irregularities to my attention, and then the DWI on top of that. So it's a series of things that have happened in the last few months while I've been watching very closely, but it's also in line with things that I've been hearing for a while, but I've not been able to substantiate prior to March.
Anyone else? Thank you, Officer. Okay, we'll now hear from the owners of the company. If you'd like to come forward, give us your name and address for our record. You'll need to come forward to the podium so that folks listening online can hear you through the microphone.
Hi, my name is Amit, and whatever the officer was saying, I got all the registration, insurance, everything is fixed now. So it's happened one time. I do understand that, but I apologize for the tag. But the guy they arrested for the drunk driving, he's no more longer with us. And, the insurance things, I fixed it. It's been fixed. we're doing a charge tip, a lot of charge tip. We cannot go lower than that. I have like here, like 300, 100,000, 100,000, 300,000, 50,000, and 100,000. So I do apologize for the tag things. That's all.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So how do you see moving forward to being able to work with the officer? Because it sounds like he's not really been.
No, I take responsibility for this thing, so I take care of very well now.
Okay.
Because I was not here, so now I'm here, so I will take care of that. So I do need a chance for that.
Okay.
If you have any complaint, then you can, you know.
And you understand the importance of the ordinances to keep the citizens safe and the importance of having the correct tag and.
Yes, I do.
And
But I got all the registration, everything is fixed already. The permits, everything, I got the files right here. If you guys want to check it or anything.
Do you dispute any of the facts that the officer gave us? Are any of those facts he gave us untrue?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you dispute that he just told us?
He was telling about the insurance things because I was not here. One of my partners say he did call or something happened. But I did call and he know that I fixed it already. My limit and everything is go high.
What about all these other allegations of
The registration things?
vehicles incorrectly and
Yeah, the registration
vehicle that
things.
wasn't approved for road travel and.
The registration things, I fixed it already. I got right here, the registration and everything. And the permit and see, those are the registrations. These are all the files are with the registrations and everything. Permit, everything's in the valid one.
But you done?
Yeah, I'm finished.
You realize some of the allegations are putting our public citizens at risk. You understand that?
Yeah, but see, I did not do that because the guy, he left from the office in the 5 o'clock in the morning.
I'm not talking about the DUI. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the entire list of allegations. I mean, you put a non-inspected car on the road. I mean, do you understand that?
Yeah, I do understand that. What is happened one time? Yeah, I apologize for that.
It sounded like it might have happened more than one time.
No, it was one time, 2 times. I'm sorry, I was not here. I guess 1 or 2 times. That's
So how many partners are there?
3.
And at any time, are all 3 of you out of the country at one time?
No. The 2 stay here, 1 is leave. I'm the main one, so I can take care of the thing now.
Unless you're out of the country.
No, yeah. Even if I leave the country, so I can take care of this thing now because it's never happened before in my knowledge.
Okay, and when your drivers, you hire your drivers, correct? And you had one that was driving for 2 years that wasn't authorized?
That driver was in and out most of the time. I basically don't know him. So he comes and goes and something like that, but I don't know him that much.
Okay,
I
I'm
was not
sorry. And
here,
also, I didn't, I'm Councilman Moore, for those that are listening in.
Mr. Ahmed, do you mind if I ask a couple questions?
Yeah.
My name is Councilman Jefferson. I'm curious, in regards to you all's hiring practices, you mentioned a number of times the responsibility falling on your drivers. What sort of process and methods do you use to ensure that you're hiring responsible employees?
Yeah.
What sort of vetting are you doing? What's your selection process for picking good employees?
See, they bring us a permit from the city. The one is officer allow them to give them a permit. We check the permit. That's how we can do because they have a valid permit. So they sign the paper and we give them a cab. But see, we don't have anything we can check the record or anything because they come through from the city. So.
And what's your, if any, do you have some sort of disciplinary policy in place where if they, for example, the gentleman, if someone doesn't have their permits in order or if someone is doing something wrong, what's your disciplinary?
We don't give them a cab.
You just don't give them a cab?
No. If they don't have a permit, we don't give them a cab.
And Mr. Manager, this was, it looks like this letter was sent on July 24th, but have they haven't officially been out of operation yet, have they?
If I'm not mistaken, I think they were out of operation for about a day.
Yeah.
And then because of the 5-day notice that is included in the ordinance, we allowed them to continue to operate.
What do you know your anticipated loss of earnings over like a day or a week? Like let's say this goes south and you're suspended for I don't know how long. How much money would you lose out on? Do you know?
I cannot tell anything.
Oh.
Yeah. I have no idea like that. But see, the most time, if it's happened with, especially I know we're gonna lose the contract with the city of High Point. We're gonna lose the contract with the logisticers because we pick up the most of senior citizen people, the one they go to the hospital and everything like that. So probably we're gonna lose them. And they're probably gonna have a hard time too because I see, I got this paper from the hospital, which is they were saying, if anybody wants to read it, because they do need us and 1 or 2 drivers, they need a cab because they go for every 3 times a week or 4 times a week for dialysis. And they don't have any of their vehicles. They use my vehicles. And yeah, that's my driver right around too. From the hospital and everything.
Mr. Mayor, I think I have one final question for Mr. Ahmed.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
In a 4-month span, it looks like you guys were cited twice for having a vehicle that didn't have the correct registration on it. I understand what you say about irresponsible drivers, but putting a vehicle out on the road, that's the business owner's decision, right? Deciding what vehicles are going to be used. Is that decided by the business owners?
Yes.
So tell me this, if we decide to let you stay in business, are you going to do it again?
No. I'm going to make sure no more cars or illegal vehicles are on the road.
Okay.
Mayor,
If I may,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Councilman Johnson. Go ahead.
Councilman Johnson, how would you ensure going forward that the registration tag or registration plate violation does not happen again?
It's not going to happen because I'm going to check it every day.
Okay. And you were not doing that before, or you and your?
No, we were not doing that before, yeah.
But to ensure.
But I'm going to make sure, yeah, now I'll check it out, everything in my own.
To ensure that that does not happen again, you all are actually physically checking that to make
Yeah.
sure.
I will, yeah.
Before the taxi goes out.
Goes out the road, yeah.
If I could just make a comment, this is Councilwoman Peters. First of all, I want to thank Inspector Cramp, and I know that must be very frustrating, and I appreciate your diligence to, keep our citizens safe. And then to Ahmed, I just want you to understand the importance of, the safety of our citizens, and that you have to abide by those ordinances. And Mayor Wagner, I'm just curious if you would, consider maybe we could even do, to make everyone happy, maybe even a 3-month probation period or something, that they could work, but then make sure that they're doing the things the right way.
I'm not sure under the city's ordinance whether a probationary period is allowed or.
I believe it is. I think it's pretty flat.
Could we hear from Officer Cramp?
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty open.
Okay.
And you can do whatever action.
With the purpose of a probationary period anyway, if they pass a probationary period, they would retain their license anyway. And if they failed again, they would come before us anyway. So it really doesn't serve a purpose. We either let them continue working or remove their license.
And
If they have an offense, it comes back to us automatically.
Before we get into that debate, does anyone have any more questions for the owner?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Councilman Johnson, how long have you guys been in business?
How long I have this
How long have
business?
you all been in business?
13 years.
13 years. And within the 13 years,
That's only I have a complaint.
it's just these grievances?
Yeah.
That, okay,
Who was doing very well before, but somehow, yeah, it's got mistake, yeah.
okay. All right,
But I'm gonna make sure now no more mistakes on there.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any more questions for the owner? So he can sit down and we can debate among ourselves. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think moving forward, what we ought to do is have some kind of a motion to debate. So does anyone have a motion on this item?
Mayor, if I
Yes.
could just make a statement for the record before we have a motion to vote. I just want to point out that although the letter actually referenced the incorrect ordinance, you've heard evidence tonight, and based on the fact that, Officer Cramp's testimony, you've heard from the manager, and then also the fact that the business owners actually showed up. Everything was followed correctly. I think it was chapter 12 instead of 11 was referenced in the notice, but everything else was followed correctly and everything was done correctly. Just want that on the record. It's just a typo.
Just a typo. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I want to make a motion, but I need to ask a question of Inspector Cramp. Just, it's a capacity question.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious about, because it's interesting what Councilwoman Peters brought up about some sort of probationary period, which I think alludes to a lot of what Councilman Hudson was also saying, in that if they offend another time, we just bring it right back. What I'm curious about is your capacity to maybe keep up with that stuff. I know there's a number of companies in our city, and I imagine you're our only taxi cab inspector, right?
I am.
So, I mean, you've got a number of things that you got to be looking out for, but what's your capacity, I guess, to give a more direct and more cautionary oversight for them?
I am in the traffic division. I'm one of the 6 active officers in the traffic division. And on the March date, I was in the middle of investigating the fatality that took place on Martin Luther King Drive, which was a second-degree murder fatality. And I had to put a second-degree murder fatality on hold because I saw a taxi cab that I knew had a bad tag on it, and I knew that there was a good chance that it might get fixed before I saw it again. I have many duties above and beyond taxi inspector, and a lot of what doesn't get substantiated is because I'm also the one who's going to Walmart, taking the crash calls in Walmart parking lot. I'm going to various neighborhoods addressing speeding complaints in various neighborhoods. It is one of a lot of different hats that I wear, and to put some form of probation on them that then requires me to focus even more attention on them than I currently am able to, pulls me away from many other duties as well. So I think that answers what you're looking at.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about.
I don't. I guess my question is for the attorney. I'm looking, the copy of the ordinance is in our packet.
Mhm.
And I'm looking for the section on what we're allowed to do with this. And it seems to me that we just have a choice of
Suspending,
suspending,
revoking it later, yeah.
yeah, suspending, revoking, or, allowing them to continue.
It sounds like, though, looking at it, you can suspend up to 30 days. It sounds a lot
The
like.
the manager can suspend for up to 30 days, pending our decision.
Right.
That's what it says.
So
And then-
that's very similar to what might be considered a probationary period, I guess. Just a different title.
Well, and I know that Officer Cramp said he'd had complaints previous, but he was not able to substantiate it, and I understand that. So I want to support staff, but then again, I mean, after 13 years of business and the first problem started in March that is recorded, you know, March, April, June, and July, and we're right in the middle of this COVID stuff. I mean, I just can't imagine. I mean, I would like to allow him to try to do the correct things and let his business remain. I mean, a lot of those folks at the Yellow Cab, I mean, now with our transit down, you know, a lot of those folks that need to get to their, you know, doctor appointments and stuff that don't have cars, and I don't know, just, it's a tough spot.
I would have to agree with Councilwoman Monica as well. They have worked on the issues. They've corrected the issue. They even have a plan going forward to ensure that this does not happen again. If they would have came here to say they did not have a plan, I would immediately say, let's suspend it completely. But they've come here with a plan. And I would agree with Councilwoman Monica that we proceed with allowing them to operate their business.
Someone willing to make a motion for something so we have something legitimate to debate?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion, and I want to preclude my actual action of the motion with an explanation, if you don't mind. I'd like to make a motion that, given that we have a responsibility to all of High Point's residents to ensure good responsibility amongst all businesses and folks who operate, and that we've heard from Inspector Cramp of a number of concerns, and that there's, yes, we hear about the driver stuff, but there's also company stuff, but also considering that this is a small business that's been operating 13 years, who has, you know, families to feed and things to keep up. I'm thinking that if given some time to really focus and ensure that stuff is tight, to ensure that you've got your disciplinary policies in place, maybe some hiring stuff to really look at that stuff, I'm actually making a motion of at least a 1 week suspension to focus on that stuff. Because at this point, there's no way that Officer Cramp is going to be able to, if he's one of 6 in our traffic division, and I just heard about something crazy on 68 a couple weeks ago, where someone died in a crash. I can't imagine asking him to try to keep a lid on this every single day, but I imagine that at least a 1 week period gives a business owner enough time to really focus. We're not revoking, and they can come right back after 1 week. That would be my motion.
Motion to suspend their license for a period of 1 week.
Do we have the option? Do we have the authority to give the time?
I believe the way it's phrased is that you would actually be giving the manager that authority to do that.
So that can't be,
Is there?
We wouldn't even need
I'll
a
second
motion.
the motion. Okay.
So wait, does that mean does that mean my motion automatically goes 30 days, or can it still be in the 1 week episode?
It can be up to whatever time period, but you would revoke as a city council board. If there's going to be a suspension, you're going to give that authority to the manager.
Manager picks the time.
And no, well, you can pick the time. I believe it's up to 30 days.
Well, he has the authority to revoke it up to 30 days pending our decision.
Pending your decision.
And if our decision is to suspend it for 7 days, then they're suspended for 7 days.
Right.
When the 7 days run out, they can restart.
The authority that the manager has.
So what do I need to amend in my motion?
Just same motion. Just
Same motion, but authorizing the city manager to do it for those 7 days.
All right. Okay, so that's an amended motion. And are you
I'll
second?
second that.
Okay. So there's a motion to suspend them, to authorize the manager to suspend the license for 1 week. And that motion has been seconded. Is there any debate on this motion?
I will say why I seconded it, because I agree with you. Changing plates on a car, that's not a mistake. That is blatant. That is blatant disregard for the law. There's no excuse for doing that. It's blatantly disregarding the law, and to do it twice, that's blatant. And that's the only time that you actually caught them. So the fact that you catch someone doing it, I assume other things are happening. So the fact that that's so blatant makes me perhaps not as forgiving as the others. My first thought was to revoke their license. And I appreciate a suspension, but I'm not happy about it.
Yeah. I would kind of echo what you're saying. I would, I would lean towards, if we're going to suspend, I would lean towards a longer period of time than just a week. But I would say that regardless of this suspension, I want our police department and our taxi inspector to keep an eye on this company and report back to us quickly if there's any more issues, because we do have a responsibility and a duty to the public to make sure that franchises that we grant to an entity to provide a public service, that they're going to be safe and that they're going to be respectful of the law, because it sounds to me like we have a company that's not just making mistakes. This is a situation, at least in the past, where we've had a willful disregard of the statutes and of safety concerns in our city. So, anyone else like to speak on this matter before we vote?
Mr. Mayor, I know I've already been so verbose, but if you guys would just entertain me, we completely support small businesses, but we also have to support the safety. I mean, we want to be the single most livable, safe, and prosperous community in America. And so for us, we're trying to support a small business and give you a chance for a week to focus on your business before you start back up again. But that we're also expecting Officer Cramp that at any infraction that it comes back to us, because I guarantee you, if I gave a week, there's plenty of folks leaning towards much more than a week. So just, we fully support small businesses, but the safety of our citizens is so important. And I encourage you and implore you and beseech you not to allow someone like another driver's responsibility to be a cop-out. It's your business. That driver's name is not on the taxi cab. A+ is. And if A+ is your brand, you got to take responsibility for your brand.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes. Well, Councilman Johnson.
Just to the owner, Councilman Johnson, that I would agree, echo Councilman Jefferson with the week suspension, just to make sure that you are vetting correctly your drivers. I do support A+. I do support small businesses. I do believe that we in High Point do need you. And I'm not saying that you all knew about the changing of the registration plates. I'm not saying that you did, no, okay. But it has happened, and again, you do have a plan of action. How are you going to ensure that that does not happen? So we wouldn't want the officer to come back in here next month, the month after, and say, we have the same problem. Because I'm going to look at you and say that you had a plan in place. Oh, no, it's not going to happen. Okay. And that's good. I want you to continue to have that. But if this week passes, the suspension passes with the 1 week, I do want you to take the time, you and the other two owners, take the time to look at the driver that you currently have, okay? Because they represent you, and you represent them. And when you're out on the road, you represent yourself and you represent the city of High Point. And we want you to do it the correct way. Okay, correct way. Thank you.
Okay, last chance. Anyone else?
May I add
Yes.
one thing? Neither company has been inspected since last fall, right before Furniture Market in the fall. The April inspections were suspended. If council would like for me to do so, I could arrange for inspections to take place at the end of the week. They would have a week of non-operation to get their stuff in order, and before they return to business, I can put them through my normal inspection process. And in theory, they should be bringing me well-tended to vehicles that are all proper. And before they resume operation, we can put the sticker on the window that says, at least from this point, everything is where it should be. And I can also reach out to the other company as well and let them know of the same inspection period. And I will set aside a day to where I can conduct my taxi inspections on both companies and renew all of their stickers like I would normally have done back in April. For those of you who may be teetering between suspension or revocation or no action, you know, that could help to ensure that they've got their ducks in a row before they go back to work.
I appreciate you saying that. This is Councilman Moore, because I wasn't teetering. I was on the side of revoking. But if that is something you feel can be done, because I see a pattern here, and I concur with Councilman Hudson, and I said it earlier. I mean, the changing of the tags, that wasn't by accident. And I don't know, it doesn't sound like they have a staff of 30 or 40, so I have a hard time understanding that one of the owners didn't know what was happening. So if you, as the law officer and the professional, feel that would meet the need and help us to support local small business, then I certainly don't have a problem with that.
I'm going to recognize the attorney because I can tell she's got something to say.
Thank you so much. I think we should also maybe add in the motion the effective date. The effective date would be tonight, starting tonight, because Officer Cramp or Manager Caslin will need to give a written order, and they'll need to reflect in that the effective time, and that way go ahead and clear that on record that it is tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll amend it, but I do have a question, because he did add that component where he'd do the inspection. If they don't pass the inspection 7 days from now, are we, what's going to be, is it like another 7 days before each inspection? What are we doing on that?
Come back to us, right?
Yeah, wouldn't they come back and tell us why they didn't pass? Then we could consider.
It's per vehicle, so you could have.
I will inspect each vehicle, and any vehicles that don't meet inspection, I can do a report on, and you can receive a report that says all of their vehicles came through and everything met, or 4 of their vehicles came through and were good and 3 of them were not. The ones that are not will not be able to operate, but the ones that do pass inspection would then at the end of the suspension be able to operate.
I see what you're saying.
And just like any other suspension or any other inspection process, the ones that don't pass inspection aren't allowed to operate until they are corrected and do pass inspection.
Okay, so it's not an all or nothing.
No,
Okay.
unless you chose to make it an all or nothing. The way I vision it is at the end of any suspension, we would conduct the inspections, and the vehicles that pass inspection can go back to work, and any vehicles that don't pass inspection,
Well, that's the law anyway.
Exactly. I'm not asking for anything beyond what we would normally do anyhow with an inspection. We just haven't had one. We missed April, and if it makes anybody feel better about letting them go back to work, we can make sure that we do an inspection as they're getting back up and running.
So I would amend my motion to add the effective date so that the suspension starts, I guess, right at this time of August 3rd, and does not, I guess, come off until, would it be the end of business August 10th? Is that how it technically said?
There is an end of business.
Around the clock. So just literally 7 days straight to the hour, I guess.
7:20 p.m.
So 7:20 p.m. on August 10th, it can be.
Question.
Wait a minute. You submitted this motion. Do you renew your second? Okay. Yes.
What about, because they're out there now, right?
Right.
So we're going to tell them
They got to park
to
it.
go through people that you got in your taxi.
Do we consider making it effective tomorrow? That way anybody who's currently working on the clock right now can finish out their
We can
shift.
do that tomorrow and let them finish up the day with what they have, because if they're already out there taking people to where they need to go, we're going to tell them to.
They can finish their trip.
They can
They
finish.
can finish their trip and then come on back.
That's what I'm asking.
They just let them finish the current trip and come on back.
Yeah, I think we're.
Because the sooner we get them off, the sooner they can get back on.
I don't,
That's what
he's
I'm asking.
not out there pulling them. He's not out there pulling them right now anyway.
But I want them to stay in, that's the point. I want them to stay in order. we're gonna do it, I want them to stay in order. If we say 7:20 or whatever time,
Yeah.
then
That would mean,
7:20.
it would mean as soon as they leave here, they have to call all drivers and get all drivers off the road ASAP.
That's right. That's right. They can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote? All right, Ms. Peters has stepped out. I'll call her name last. Council, the motion is to suspend for 1 week through 7:20 PM of August 10th. All right, Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilman Moore? Mayor Pro Tem Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
And Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
The mayor votes aye. Councilwoman Peters is perfect timing. Councilwoman Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes by a vote of 9-0. Next, we're still on tax and cabs. So this is an amendment to the tax cab ordinance. And are you speaking with us on the amendment as well?
Sure.
Okay, come on, tell us about the amendment.
Our current ordinance reflects 50,000, 100,000, 50,000 as the limits, and per general statute 20-280, the minimum the state now requires is 100,000, 300,000, 50,000. So the amendment would be to bring the city ordinance in compliance with state law.
That's pretty easy. Anyone have any questions about that? Motion to approve. Motion to approve by Councilman Moore, seconded by Councilman Hudson. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, call the roll. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
And mayor votes aye. That motion is approved by a vote of 9-0. Thank you, officers. Next, we have a couple of appointments. One is to the Planning and Zoning Board. This is Councilwoman.
Is he clear on what we're doing, the owner of the company?
You're finished.
Does he know what he's got to do?
Yes, suspension begins immediately. Your drivers who are out delivering somebody, they can deliver them, but after that, they got to come in for 1 week. Correct. 7:20.
What about the inspection? They'll be in contact with you tomorrow.
Yeah, Officer Crown will be in contact with you. Councilwoman Peters, do you want to speak regarding your appointment?
Yeah, he came highly recommended, and we had some great conversations. His resume is wonderful. He's got lots of experience, so I think he'll do a great job.
Okay. Is that a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, so motion to approve has been brought by Councilwoman Peters, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Any debate on this item? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the roll. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye, so that motion is approved by a vote of 9-0. Next is a Parks and Rec appointment of Lauren Britton. It's Mr. Hudson's appointment. Would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Todd Nifong has resigned from Parks and Rec, and this will be a replacement to fill his unexpired term. He still has another year on his term. So I will make a motion to appoint Lauren Britton to take his term, which will run through July 1st of 2021 on Parks and Rec Commission.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Jefferson. Any debate on this item? Okay, hearing none. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore? Aye. Mayor Pro Tem Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. That is approved. That motion's approved by a vote of 9-0. We have some minutes to be.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the minutes by Councilman Britmore, seconded by Councilwoman Peters. Any debate on the minutes? Any corrections?
Only thing I'll say is only because I know he mentions it to me in conversation. Harmon's name is spelled M-A-N at the end instead of M-O-N. It does bug him. He doesn't say it out loud, but it bugs him.
All right. But you willing to amend your motion to fix that typo, Mr. Moore?
I am.
Yes. Mr. Peters, your second's still good? Your second is still good?
Yeah,
on that-
yeah,
on
yeah.
that typo correction?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's his fault. Let's go back and redo all this. All right. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote? You still with us? All right. Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore?
Aye.
Councilman Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. So with Patrick Harmon's name corrected, we are 9-0. All
Motion
right.
to recess?
Yes, I don't think we actually need a motion to go into recess. I just declare us in recess.
It says on the agenda.
Oh, wait, recess.
Yes, this
Oh, okay. I thought you meant for now. I was like,
this meeting is hereby recessed until Wednesday, August 5th at 5:30 p.m., where council may take action on the public hearing items that were debated at the meeting tonight. So we are now standing in recess until Wednesday, August 5th, 5:30 p.m.